I'm going to walk through the HP Omen Max 16 RTX 5060 Pro the way I would if I were sitting at a desk trying to decide whether it actually solves the problems I have with my current setup. You've probably seen a lot of hype about gaming laptops that beat a desktop i9, but the real question is, does that headline translate into a smoother experience for the games you actually play, and does it fit into the lifestyle you lead? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about why you might be hesitating. The biggest fear when you click Add to Cart on a high-end gaming machine is ending up with a device that's either too bulky for daily commuting, or one that can't keep up with newer titles a few months down the road. At the same time, you don't want to overpay for a laptop that's basically a glorified desktop in a bag. The Omen Max 16 tries to land in that sweet spot, a 16-inch screen that's large enough for immersive play, a Ryzen 9 HX375 CPU that HP claims can push past 5 GHz, and an RTX 5060 GPU that sits comfortably between the 3060 and 3070 tiers. It also comes with a PCO cooler that promises to keep temperatures in check during marathon sessions. Who should actually consider this machine? If you're a competitive player who needs a higher refresh rate display for shooters, the 240Hz WQXGA panel is a clear win. The 2560x1600 resolution gives you that extra vertical space for strategy games and makes the image look sharper than the typical 1080p panels you find on many mid-range laptops. The fact that it's a 16-inch chassis means you still have a decent amount of screen real estate without the weight penalty of a 17-inch monster. On the other side, if your primary use case is content creation with heavy video encoding, you'll appreciate the 16GB of DDR5 RAM and the 1TB SSD. The SSD is large enough to hold a few modern games plus a decent library of editing files, and DDR5's higher bandwidth means you'll see quicker load times in texture-heavy titles. Now, let's get into the practical strengths that become apparent after a few weeks of use. The first thing I noticed was the consistency of frame rates on titles like Valorant and Apex Legends. The 240Hz panel can actually display those high frame rates without introducing tearing, especially when you enable G-Sync through the NVIDIA driver. In a more demanding scenario like Cyberpunk 2077 at medium settings, the RTX 5060 held around 55 frames per second, which is respectable for a laptop in this price range. The Ryzen 9 HX375, with its 24MB L3 cache, handled background streaming and voice chat without dipping the game performance, something many users forget to test when they're only looking at raw FPS numbers. The bundled PCO cooler also proved its worth during a 3-hour Elden Ring session. Temperatures hovered in the low 70s Celsius under load, which is lower than many comparable laptops that often push past 85°C without an external fan. The cooler's design is fairly quiet, too. I could keep the volume low and still hear the in-game audio clearly. That matters if you're playing in a shared apartment or streaming to a small audience. Connectivity is another area where the Omen Max 16 feels more thought out than the spec sheet suggests. It offers 2 USB-A 10 gigabits per second ports and 2 USB-C ports, one of which supports Thunderbolt 4. I was able to hook up an external 4K monitor for a dual-screen workflow without any hiccups, and the Wi-Fi 7 module gave me a stable 1 gigabit per second connection on my home network, handy for large game patches or cloud-based streaming services. The inclusion of a full-size HDMI 2.1 also means you could connect to a TV for couch coop sessions without needing an adapter. Where the Omen Max 16 starts to show trade-offs is in its battery life and weight. The 99Wh battery, while large for a laptop, still drains to about 30% after a 2-hour gaming session with the screen set to its native brightness and the GPU under load. If you expect to game on the go without a power outlet, you'll need to plan for that. The chassis, at roughly 6.5 pounds, is sturdy but not exactly travel-friendly. It fits into a backpack, but you'll feel the heft on a long commute. For someone who needs a portable device for both work and occasional gaming, there are lighter alternatives that sacrifice a bit of performance but gain several hours of battery life. Another nuance is the keyboard. The RGB backlighting is vibrant, and the key travel feels satisfying for most gamers, but the layout leans toward a more aggressive angle that can be uncomfortable for long typing sessions. If you're a developer or writer who spends 8 hours a day on code, you might find the keyboard a little less ergonomic than a more neutral laptop keyboard. Lastly, the price point deserves a brief reality check. While HP markets this as a 2025 CES best laptop, the actual cost sits in the high $2,000 range. That's a significant investment, and it's worth asking whether you'll actually be using the RTX 5060 to its full